There's a formula to it. A very simple formula.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bite-Sized Films. This episode is on the infamous Halloween 5. I'm looking forward to talking about this and sort of explaining why I think this was a low point in the series. But they went from the cliffhanger ending that is Halloween 4 and sort of retconned it out of fear of going down the Michael Myers is really dead route. And instead, we got some really bad decision making and a really bad ending that we will talk about later. This movie caused them to wait quite a while to make Halloween 6, as Halloween 5 came out literally a year after Halloween 4. I don't like how this movie goes even further trying to explain away everything that happened in Halloween 4. I think the way they did this makes no sense and is honestly completely unnecessary. Just don't explain it. It's so much better than explaining things that have no credibility or connection to the original film you're trying to explain away. I think this is one of my least favorite Halloween movies, but Halloween Resurrection still takes the cake as the worst Halloween film in my mind. Don't even get me started on that movie. I am not looking forward to having to cover that one later on for the series. Halloween 5 is a movie that you watch as part of a watch-through of the series. Other than that, I would skip this movie every time. I will go through some more behind-the-scenes stuff and other little tidbits of information, other things as the movie goes on and at the end of the video. But for now, let's get biting. Halloween 4 was released on October 13th, 1989, and it grossed $11.6 million, which is about $25 million. This was about $6 million more than the budget of $5.5 million it cost to make. The original story for this movie featured Jamie Lloyd, Jimmy Strode, becoming evil after killing her mom. This would have been a really amazing way to take this story, and one honestly I would have really enjoyed. This is one of the things I am very disappointed we will never see. One of my favorite things about this movie, however, is just the random plot details they do add and that Halloween 6 just tries to somehow wrap together, which some could argue that they don't do a good job at. However, I think the producer cut does an okay job. I think this movie could be 1,000 times better than it is if the production wasn't rushed to release almost exactly a year later than Halloween 4. This movie is my least favorite Halloween movie compared to the likes of Halloween Resurrection as my least favorite. Our movie begins with some very 1989 early 90s opening, which the Halloween 4 opening easily outdoes. The fact that this opening is almost entirely made of knife swipes reminds me of the kind of shitty Jason Goes to Hell, which I will be talking about at a later point. This honestly is so boring. Eventually you find out that it's him stabbing a pumpkin over and over again, but still just boring and weird. The movie starts with a quick recap of what happened to Michael in Halloween 4. We pick up right after Michael falls into the well and we find that he crawled his way into the water system and managed to climb into the river, and this is how Michael survives Halloween 4. Ultimately destroying the coolness of Halloween 4's ending, but nevertheless, Michael ends up finding some hermit who lives in a shack by the river. This man goes out to check what's going on after he heard a noise, and he comes back inside to be strangled by Michael Myers, who ends up collapsing afterwards. We cut to a year later at Child's Clinic on Halloween Eve. Jamie's there being tested on, which of course winds us up with some creepy flashing of her killing her mother and her screaming but no voice coming out. She sounds like she's absolutely freaking out. And then we get our first ever Cult of Thorn we see in these movies. Michael gets up without his mask, and Jamie and Michael have a weird connection where Jamie is copying Michael's movements. But after Michael kills the guy who helped save him, she begins to act as if she was dying. The doctor takes her down the hallway and tries to find out what's happening, and they basically were going to cut a hole in her neck so she can breathe. Then Dr. Loomis comes in and stops them, knowing that she would be okay. A girl and a dog show up, and if you haven't been able to tell, Jamie does not talk much or at all in this movie. It is honestly one of the worst decisions they could possibly have made for this movie. Dr. Loomis shows up and basically kicks the girl and the dog out of the house before the brick gets sent through the window with the note, "The evil child must die." Dr. Loomis and Rachel are talking outside, while Loomis talks about Rachel being scared of Michael returning once again, which, obviously happens, or else I wouldn't be here talking about it. Max barks at someone in the bushes, and it's Michael Myers stalking around the outside of the house watching Rachel. Jimmy gets her connection to Michael Myers while Dr. Loomis is watching her. She begins drawing violently while Max barks and Rachel is taking a shower. Dr. Loomis calls the house and Rachel goes to check on Max because Jamie told her to, and Michael is in the house and the door is open. Max is missing. And this next scene is one of the worst scenes in this entire franchise, only to a specific scene in Halloween Resurrection. This is completely unedited and is the entire version of the movie that anyone can watch.
All clear.
Nothing above, nothing below.
I do not understand why they decided that was what they wanted to do for these characters. She hears Max bark and goes to investigate and winds up getting killed by Michael Myers while Jamie shakes her head violently. Dr. Loomis talks to the sheriff talking about the events of Halloween 2. The girl from earlier goes to the house Rachel died in and Michael is talking around the house watching her. The doorbell rings but nobody is there, but whoops, it's this other girl, Sammy, who shows up halfway through basically playing which side of the house is Michael gonna watch us from. We meet the girl's boyfriend who is honestly such a jerk, but like it's so obvious that's the intention. But there's more Jamie's psychic connections to, oh god, Michael is at the clinic. Jamie runs around the house but Michael is at the door, so she runs downstairs trying to find anywhere to go, but she eventually has to climb into a little hole in the wall. But wait, holy shit, it's not Michael. It's just someone else, and the nurse from earlier. Dr. Loomis starts yelling at Jamie because she's quote unquote protecting Michael from Loomis. We cut and we see a man in a black coat and black shoes get off a bus. He's confusingly important, and we'll find out what I mean later. Also, this is supposed to be the Myers house, but no, it's not. I'm not even going to play into that. They're nothing similar. In fact, the layout looks more similar to Stu's house in Scream. Dr. Loomis is poking around in the old Myers house and finds a dead rat in a vent. Michael Myers stalks the two girls from earlier and the one boyfriend. He gets jump scared. This whole scene reeks of really shitty, I don't know how teenagers are. And this scene is so bad, I can barely watch this without cringing. It's also terribly dubbed over at parts in the scene. Michael Myers puts a garden shovel and scrapes it onto his car. Michael chokes him and stabs him. Jamie's in a pageant for Halloween. We see another clip of the man in black watching this house, and the girl tells the person to open the door and it locks and she gets in. He's a man in a mask but not the Myers match, which I find interesting. They drive down the road and she gets out of the car to get cigarettes. This is intercut between Jamie trying to tell where Michael is and he takes the mask off and puts on the Michael Myers mask. The cop shows up and we cut to Tina at the pageant place. They steal cops with no clown music this time. We're told to follow Tina. The man in black walks around creepily for no reason and we see Tina at a Halloween party. Michael Myers shows up but the cops don't do anything as Michael shows up and they all run out of the house screaming. But wait, it's not Michael, it's just this guy, and it's so dumb. But wait, is this Michael in the barn? Tina follows after a kitten, but when she calls out for her friend, she gets jump scared by two of them. One of the two friends thinks it's the one of the suit, but before we know it, she gets pushed down, and whoa, that's violent, but nope, it's just the one in the suit again. They start to make out in a really terribly dubbed over scene, it's so bad. The real Michael Myers picks up a rake and pins the man through his chest with it, and then he picks up a scythe and sprays blood on the floor, and that's it. The Michael Myers meets the cops, but they just think it's not him. We cut to Jamie and her friend running through the field towards this party when Tina goes into the barn and finds a kitten with blood on it, and a bloodied scythe before the bodies pile into her and she runs out screaming, and we find the policemen both dead in the car before Jamie starts to scream her name. Michael shows up and starts to chase Tina in a car before Michael randomly stops and starts chasing after her friend and Jamie. Michael begins to chase Jamie into a very wooded area and she just keeps running and running, and this scene lasts forever and it will never end. It lasts for so long before Michael hits a tree and the car freaking explodes. Jamie's on the ground and crying out for Tina, but somehow Michael survived and gets out of the car. He looms over Jamie, but Tina runs up and gets stabbed. Instead of her, they run away, and Dr. Loomis shows up and saves them both. Dr. Loomis yells at Michael, who is supposedly in the woods. At this point, I'll be honest, I was completely zoned out. Somehow this movie managed to do nothing that Halloween 4 didn't do, and did it all way slower and 10 times more boring than Halloween 4. I honestly cannot describe to you how boring this movie is. Like, it's a tough line between this one and Halloween Resurrection is the worst movie. Because at least Halloween Resurrection has parts you can laugh at. This movie is just so stupid. They repeat the scene of all of them locked in the house from Halloween 4, but this time Jamie channels someone and starts talking about Billy, and the police go to the clinic. The dubbing is so bad in the scene too, it's so bad. The cop is going to take Jamie to the police station, but Dr. Loomis doesn't want her to go anywhere. There's a cop in a car that radios in that gets slammed into by Michael, and gets murdered off screen. Loomis destroys the radio and points a gun at the cop. He tells her to stay in the house before Michael's outside. Loomis finds Michael upstairs and he is talking about Jamie being able to stop the rage of Michael. They try really hard to humanize Michael in the scene, which I find really stupid, but nope, he stabs Dr. Loomis and throws him off a balcony, but he's still alive. Also, Jamie can just randomly say whole words, while before she couldn't say anything. It just doesn't make any sense. Michael tries to get into where Jamie and the cop are, but the cop shoots him and Michael runs and stabs him and hangs him with the rope they were gonna use to escape while Jamie runs away. Jamie climbs into the laundry chute to hide from Michael, which is honestly the only intense bit of this movie. Michael tries to grab her and she falls all the way into the bottom of the chute in the basement from earlier in the movie. Michael just stares at the container and tries to open it and climb back up, but Michael instead opts to finally getting it open and just stabbing upwards into the vent. But that doesn't work, so instead he just decides to stab through the vent, so she climbs up the vent, but not before getting stabbed in the legs once and finally, and manages to make her way up to the top, thus ending the only kind of intense scene of this entire film. Jamie goes upstairs and finds a bunch of dead bodies, and one dead body in the form of Michael Myers himself. She stops and finds herself in a coffin before she calls out for her uncle and asks to see his face. We do kind of see his face in a really darkly lit dumb way, and he only sheds one tear, but as soon as Jamie touches her, he tries to kill her and goes ham in the bathtub. I guess he hates bathtubs. It appears that Dr. Loomis is like giving Jamie up to Michael, but he isn't, and he shoots Michael with a tranquilizer after a bunch of chains fall on him. He repeatedly hits Michael over the head with a piece of wood. Loomis falls on top of him and stares at him as cops pull over to the house. Michael Myers is in a jail cell with chains on when we cut to Man in Black walking towards the police station. Jamie and a cop go to leave the police station when the Man in Black just starts shooting into the police station, repeatedly shooting while Jamie walks towards the police station. She goes to look in the jail while stepping over dead bodies, but when she goes to check the jail cell, she finds that, wait, the Man in Black broke Michael out of prison? Michael has escaped. She starts screaming no, and it cuts to black. And with that, a bite has been taken out of Halloween 5. Rewatching it, this movie may have been the most bored I have ever been out of the entire franchise, at least up to this point. You'll see what happens when we get to Resurrection, but I was bored the entire time I had to watch this movie. It was not worth the almost 2-hour watch time because it felt like 4. This movie flopped in both audience and critical ratings, and it would be almost 6 years until we would see the likes of Halloween 6. The director of this movie was known for After Darkness, a horror movie from 1985, and The Omen 4 from 1991. This film was also written by Shem Bitterman mostly, but changed by Michael Jacobs and the director himself. This movie had almost 20 kills in an hour and 37 minutes. My favorite kill is the leather jacket boyfriend getting the garden shovel through his head, and my least favorite is the off-screen scythe on the policeman shot at the end of the movie. And that's it. Thank you for watching this video. Go check out my podcast about this movie and a bunch of other movies. Thank you for watching, liking, and subscribing. It honestly means the world to me, and I cannot thank you enough. Like always, remember, treat every day like it's Halloween.